Phanerozoic eon, in which the overwhelming majority of fossils are known, the past 540 million years, can be divided into three eras, the oldest one being the Paleozoic era, and that can be divided into periods beginning with the Cambrian period, which begins about 541 million years ago. This period is significant because during the Cambrian period there was a great increase in the complexity of animals, the number of animals which made hard parts, which would fossilize more easily, so much so that the growth in the fossil record is sometimes referred to as the Cambrian explosion. How did this Cambrian explosion come about? One must consider the time period which preceded it, the Neoproterozoic eon. This can be subdivided into three periods, beginning with the Tonian period from 1 billion years ago to 720 million years ago. During this time period, eukaryotic fossils were relatively common. There were the first fossils of eukaryotic groups known as dinoflagellates, and the problematic group known as acritarchs, whose affinities are being debated, and later the first fossils of amoeba and paramecia. Given the diversity of these groups in the family tree of Protists, it is clear that various lineages had diverged by this point. From 720 to 635 million years ago, the Cryogenian Period marked the worst glaciations the planet has ever known. In fact, much to most of the oceans seem to have frozen, resulting in a snowball/slush ball Earth stage. There were different glaciations with a warm interval between them. During this time, eukaryotic fossils became less common as the living conditions probably pushed life to the brink. The oceans became largely anoxic, as can be observed in the minerals deposited during this time. Some have interpreted problematic fossils from this period as potentially representing sponges or protosponges, so it is possible that the very first animals originate from this time. The Ediacaran period, which began 635 million years ago to 541 million years ago, is characterized by animal fossils, including some which have been interpreted as sponges. The first cnidarians, the group which includes jellyfish and coral relatives. The first worms, including both relatively flat worms and then worms which would have been capable of burrowing. And at the very end of the Ediacaran period, just prior to the beginning of the Cambrian period, there is evidence of transitional forms linked to higher animal groups, such as arthropods, mollusks, annelid worms, and echinoderms. And thus, the roughly 500 million years of the Neoproterozoic was an incredibly important time in Earth's climate, as Earth went from a milder climate to having the most severe glaciations in its history, where the oceans became largely anoxic, to warmer times where the oceans once again increased in their oxygen content. This was also a critically important time for animals, in that the very first animals originate during the Neoproterozoic and had diversified to the point where they were poised to undergo the Cambrian explosion 541 million years ago.